Satisfied. Are you satisfied with religion? And if you are, would you like to know more about it? Um, Being satisfied is, by definition, somebody who is satiated or um, really content with what's going on. It's a happiness. It's an internal happiness. Satisfied, to be satisfied. If somebody gave you an explanation and you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. At that moment, you would feel satisfied with their explanation. Well, let me see if I can help you through my 35-year studies, linguistics, and things to show you something about being satisfied. Um, I wish I had a, great video presentation for you where I had background going on all the time, like some kind of, no, really I don't actually. uh, and background music sometimes just pisses people off, so I'm just going to go raw with this, and I should edit and clip it all together real well like I used to do some of the others, but I've found that free forming it works a little bit better for me and it feels a little better, although I always seem to leave something out, and you usually see down in the comments something. So if you look down in the comments there or in the presentation prologue at the first of it, you'll probably see something that I've left out about this, or that I found that attaches it later, or that I should have said that I just totally left out. But regardless of that, let's look into this being satisfied. Because to be satisfied nowadays is really what everybody's looking for, you know, uh, in every aspect of life, to be satisfied with your job, to be satisfied with your home life, to be satisfied with your pay, to be satisfied with your lot you've been giving in life, to be satisfied totally. And God is supposed to give this to you. His presence inside you is supposed to give this to you, or his being, your knowing of him, your feeling of him, things like that. This makes a person satisfied. So I studied linguistics for a long time, and indeed, whenever you get into this and ancient archaeological studies and peoples and cultures and ancient ideograms, symbolism, and all these things, you end up finding words, and then you find correlations of words, and you can kind of see where there's two types of correlations you usually can end up making easily. One is the same word or a word with just a letter changed, like satis, satus, or whatever. And then there's ones where if I find satis over here means that they're happy, and then over here I find something else that says that they're happy, but it's got the same ideogram, then you also can attach these things and you can put a string from those two and start to make correlations. Anyhow, I don't want to get too deep off into things like that, but I want to give you a little background of what we're doing right here so we can take a look at this. This is Matthew 5:6, and it says, Blessed are those who hunger, whoops, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And so this gives you an idea that if you're hungry or you're thirsty, God can help fix that. Well, indeed, we have to like drink. If we were running around in the desert looking for God, we better find water, and hopefully God will lead us to water, these types of things. And then you could find that that would be a sign that you were satisfied if you found an oasis. Well, lots of times whenever I'm studying this stuff, I feel like I'm lost in the desert trying to find little chips of information before I totally dehydrate or get so tired that I want to pass out and go to sleep and try to mull it over. And sometimes I find oases that actually contain treasure, and it's amazing. So let's look at satisfied. I mean, you feel you're satisfied. Everyone feels they're somewhat satisfied, but then again, inside of every person, there's this feeling of not quite satisfaction. Even people that are rich are like striving for more. Even Tiger Woods wanted to win that much more. Everybody has this striving. So, and striving can bring satisfaction and all these things. So, and satisfaction is another leading word where you have a faction of satis. And so what is satis? And satis to be satisfied, you have to be satis. And and that makes common sense out of here. And of course, ancient languages with Roman, Greek, Phoenician, Canaanite, dialects, Hebrew that comes from that, Persian, India, Egyptian. You can find all these people that had written languages at the time. You can find variations of this idea of satisfaction that they have too. And it also kind of leads and gives you an idea of that they all had this idea of satisfaction too. But then the satisfied thing is just, it's kind of an odd idea, but then it's there. And it's in all cultures, and you find that today we use certain words for certain things that are good. Like one example might be saturate. Saturate is whenever you pour water over something until it becomes saturated. And what is that? Well, we all know that that means, kind of covered or infilled with. And so that gives you another, a religious idea at it too, a spiritual idea at it that you can be filled up with. But also this gives you an idea of back in the old times when they had the small minor floods that would actually cultivate the fields and things, all the way back to the Sumerians, where they would utilize the floods of the early part of the year in the springtime to flood their fields. And in doing so, it allowed them to grow and have agriculture, the very first agriculture on earth. And that this saturation would be helping to cause this. And we look at it today as being saturation. Now, you can look at Latin and say we get a lot of things from that. Latin comes out of a Hebrew Greek type of thing, and is pulled from the area of the Levant, where the Greeks used to, run around and do their things. As their vocabulary changed, everything changed dramatically back to the Trojan Wars and things like that. And it seems to be where we kind of lose our past. So let's look at this satisfied, and let's see if we can find out something more about it. If we go and look at Bible verses, they are always talking about trying to be satisfied about things or things that will make you satisfied. And so let's go to the Bible about a verse. If you want to be satisfied. So let's look at the dictionary first, and let's look up what satis is. Okay, satis is the past of sati. Okay, satis is to have been satis. Okay, all right. So you'll find words that are out of this, then and its original origins. Satious, like satiated. Satis, satious, satiated. To be satiated, satisfied. But what is satyr doing on here? That's the ancient Canaanite area. That's the whole area of the Levant, and they have it as satyr. Well, that's strange. Okay, so satyr is the idea of Saturn, and the satyrs that used to live in that area, and they're like always pictured as half goat people and things, which is weird. And you find that they had all of this satyra, satyri, satyra. This is all male and masculine, feminine forms, and ones that don't contain feminine forms. Satura, Saturum. All of these come from this, right? And it comes from satyr, which could be S-A-T-Y-R, and that would be satyr. It's the same meaning or running off of it. Well, that's odd. So let's go back to that Bible verse real quick, and let's look again. That was Psalms 107:9. And it says, "For he satisfies the longing of the soul, and with his goodness fills the hungry." And people have twisted that around, but this is the way I think it should be said. But so you look, and he satisfies is hispaya. Hispaya. Also with goodness is tob, which actually has something to do with tohu and bohu and the feminine aspect of the dragon that ran the world. But we're not going to go there today. Let's look at hispaya. What does this mean? Well, you'll find that it's thirsty, The thirsty soul, the longing soul, soul to be thirsty, for he has satisfied the soul of the thirsty. Okay, so that's that fits with it good. Okay, let's go back with it here real quick. So what does strong say that it has to do with then? Well, interesting, it says that it's satisfied and that it has to do with Saba or Sabe. And that's the Sabaeans showing up again, which if you'll look at one of my old videos from way back, I have this Noah correlation where Noah, it looks like Noah had something to do with the oppression and destruction of Job and putting him through all the crap that he goes through. And that doesn't almost make any sense, but then again, it's there. And I've seen a couple of guys have even found some of this info and look at it by dissecting the Hebrew off of it. They're like, if you put the words in there and you know what Seba refers to, now all of a sudden this idea of being satisfied comes out to be a totally different thing. Well, I'll show you how it becomes a different thing. It tells you, so satisfied is to become satisfied or to become weary. So it could be the opposite and yearning for it, but being satisfied continually, drink their fill, you have enough for the full. That's the way it's looked at and everything. So you look up and they show you that Chronicles has it in there. And Cronus is the god of time, and Chronicles tells you the story of time. So interesting, that's in there. Okay, but let's go on here. Let's keep this in thought, though. Be satiated with food, especially human subject. Accusative with food. Let's see, have desire. There's one in here that's real important. I hope I can find it real quick for you. But you get goodness. It's touched with goodness. Okay, goodness. And this has got to be a holy thing to these people where they're getting all this. And there's so many references to it that it must be something that's brought to them by their God. It makes them satisfied, or it makes them satiated with their God. And so satiation seems to be sate, glut. And so gluttony comes from that. Lamentations, accusations of a person. And here we go to Job 9:18. And that leads you back to that Noah thing I was telling you about. You can watch my other video about it, but it says, "Oh, Sibe," right? So this is it, and forms or translations are all through here. But so variations of that too. And Sabanu, Sabbat. So the Sabbath comes from that too. Okay, well, so what's this got to do with everything? So their Sabbath has to do with insatiated and Satur and the Saturns. Well, okay, well let's look at Saturn. So we're going to go to Wiktionary here, and we're just going to look up, I guess, Saturn God. And we should have the information here off of it. No, we're not in the right thing. Let's do this. I'm going to go to Google. Really? You're not going to let me do it? Let's try that again, people. And we're going to look up Saturn. The god Saturn. And so here's Wiki's thing. We'll just go there. I mean, they've got good information. Everybody's like, Wiki, well, it's attested stuff. But Saturnus, Saturn, and of course all the old Roman deities used to put us on the end of anything. Therefore, Zeus is actually Zeus, and Saturnus is Saturn, and so all these gods that they put us and or and on and things like that onto. Really, their original name just doesn't have the us. It's almost a deification type of thing. So he's the guy that was reigning during the golden age of plenty and peace. The temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum housed the state treasury. In December, he was celebrated with what perhaps is the most famous of Roman festivals, Saturnalia, which was a 12-day festival recreated on our 12 days of Christmas. And a lot of people know that, that's a pagan holiday and everything. Well, hold on, I'll try to wrap all this together for you real quick. But so anyhow, so it's a time of feasting, free speech, gift giving, and revelry. That sounds like what we do for Christmas. So we do this thing, and gift giving. Okay, so Saturn. Saturn was known um, in the Levant area by a different name. Now, he's Greek Kronos. You can see here, Greek Kronos. But then also, Kronos' role in the genealogy was transferred to Saturn whenever Greek and Rome get together. And everybody knows that the Greek and Roman gods, they knew that they had all worshiped the same gods apparently, and so they folded them together but kept their names separate. And that's how we get the different names. And it's how we named our planets. You know, all these different planets are actually the old primordial gods and stuff, so they had that so no one would forget or any of those type of things, right? So Saturnus Mons was actually the Capitol Hill. It's known as Capitol Hill, and it's actually where you find the Vatican nowadays. So they used to worship this guy there, and then whenever they turned it into Christianity and Catholicism, they really just kind of built right on top of that a whole new idea on top of it. And so, and that actual truth in that is kind of enlightening too, that they had actually just kind of built on top of what they already had with that. So, there's another thing is that Stir, Saturn is related with Satyr, the Etruscan gods, the satyrs, right? And Stir, and so you get words coming out of Stir, and this derives from Sturkus, which is dung or manure, right? Referring to re-emergence from death to life, actually, but Stir refers to poop. And so that's odd too. But then Saturn. So Saturn and Kronos. But what was he known as in the Levant area itself? And so you'll find that he was named El. He was literally just straight up El. And you see God's name in the Bible, if you've looked into it, is not actually where it always says God, Lord, God, Lord, God, Lord nowadays, and it capitalizes it and half capitalized and all these weird things, and you wonder what that's all about. It originally said El Shaddai, El Elyon, El, all these other guys, and their epitaphs of God, Eloha, the Elohim, and things. And so that starts to be pretty revealing. Hold on, let's look into this just a little more. El was this deity, right? So El, and he's written as Aleph Lamed, right? The Phoenician way is written, of course, in what looks like Old Canaanite or Hebrew. And then Cognate Akkadian is Elu. Okay, so the Elu are their gods, the Elu, and they can also be Elah or Allah. Wow, so that attaches this El god from the whole area. You know, this is all Persia at one time, all running to the middle. You had really Egypt down the bottom, Rome and Greek and everything up top, Persia running through the middle of it. And so you look at this, and he's a specific god that is the ruler of the Canaanite religion and the supreme god of the Mesopotamian Semites in the pre-Sargonic period. Now, whenever you get into the Sargonic period, you end up having where their pantheon changes, and if you remember Greek lit, Zeus takes over, and he's the storm god and comes in and does his type of thing. So, El. This isn't okay. I'm fixing to get to it real quick here because I don't want to make this a 40-minute video again. But so they have found now that there are different authors in the Bible and that they have blended it together. One is priestly sources, Yahweh sources, Elohist, so on like that. And I don't know if you've studied the Bible enough, but they break it off into Yahwist, Elohist, Deuteronomist, then J, P, and E, priestly source. And so the Semitic root il Arabic ia in Aramaic is Allah. So you can see how the people over here would be calling him El, and those guys would be calling him Allah. Okay, so apparently this is the origin of the whole Allah thing too. That's neat. Okay, let's figure out a little bit more about this. Well, you can read about this. You can pause and read what it says all in here and everything, and it'll give you a little bit more attachment to everything if you want to and in between. But let's see if I can get to the point for you. A Phoenician inscribed tablet at Arslan Tash, they referred to El. Okay, an eternal bond has been established for us. Ashur has established it for it, and all divine beings, and the majority of the group of the holy ones. Well, that's weird that name Ashur is there, because that's actually what he says whenever he talks to Moses at the burning bush, and he asks him his name, and he says, I am what I am. If you look at the Hebrew name, it says Ashur. It says Ayah, Ashur, Ayah, right? And that's weird because Ashur is also Ashurbanipal, okay? But then, so this shows you that Ashurbanipal had something to do with this whole burning bush thing, but more than so. But let me see if I can just break through this. I'm not going to sit and try to show you an hour-long thing or try to go even 10 minutes more showing you different things about this. But Amorites also have same inscriptions. Ugarites and the entire Levant is caused to be Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hadad, which is Baal Hadad. Yam is the ocean god. Mot is the god of death. So modern Rosh Hashanah shows a lot of interesting information that no one had ever had up until recently, and it's kind of hidden from the Christian community and stuff, where he's called Toru El, or he is the bull god, El Toro, the bull, and the father of all gods, the father of man. And you look at it, they actually have this story. If you look into the Saturn thing, I'm not going to spend another 20 minutes showing you the actual story of how they feel that it went down, but it's incredibly leading with the Bible story too, by the way. But I think that actually comes from the Sumerian stories. In fact, you can tell that they knew of the Sumerian stories, and there is a Sumerian story, if you're not aware, of the Aluma Elish, and it has the flood in it and all these things that people nowadays have easily been able to attach and say, this is it, this is the flood of the Bible, these are these people over here. Abraham left the land of Ur. This is where these Ugaritic texts are all found out too, that are talking about this other thing that actually attaches to El and Hebrews in Christianity. So, wow, and well, and therefore. So, now El, in there, in the tablets they found talking about El, not Yahweh, he's known as El Elam. Yeah, he's known as El, he's known as all these epitaphs. That's weird. Okay, so Hadad was looked at as being Jupiter. This is Baal Hadad, his son. And so you have El as a major god, who is Saturn. And below him is Baal Hadad, who was looked at as being the storm god. He has another daughter. Her name is Anat, and she's a fierce warrior. Well, Anat is actually Inanna, who is Diana, who is all of the female gods from over in that area with Asherah, and who ends up becoming Istara, who becomes Easter, and her worship was around the spring equinox, and where you get Istara and the festival of Easter that we have today that involved eggs and bunnies and the whole 9 yards, and we're still doing it today. So let's look into this just a little deeper, and I'm just going to reveal it to you right now. El is the god of the Canaanites, but he's also the god of Abraham and everybody in the Bible, because El is the epitaph of God of these people. And in your Bible, there's 232 places where God is referred to as being El, or an epitaph of El that we now find was only attached to these guys. Okay? So, hold on, let's find out about this before you freak out and click off of it. How can you prove this? Well, God's council is called the Elohim. That's what they're called here too. But El sticks out like the elephant in the room in the Bible, and I don't know why it's taken 2,000 years for people to see this, but the name of the house of God is Bethel, and Beth is house, and the name of God is El. You know, it's always like some kind of secret thing they've kept, and and then they twitch it to Yahweh, and then you don't know who that is. Well, you can Google image Yahweh and his Asherah, and you'll see that they're bull gods. Yeah, from the Sumerians that are in that area, who are probably really attached to these Sumerians that are just over here. Sasu. Really? You change one letter? Okay. So, How is L attached to all this? Well, there's angels, and their names are Gabriel, Ariel. Hmm? Doesn't sound weird? Raphael, Azazel. Everybody's got an L on the end. In fact, until Latin was created, every word now that we look at with EL on the end or LE on the end, also connected to L, like circle. And you find words like ball, the little round ball. And then that's still from that circle or ball. It is Circe and L, and Circe is the god of grain. El and Saturn was originally a god of grain. In Sumerian mythology, he was Ninurta that came and took over and ended up becoming Marduk and the big thing that happens out of that. So, but El has a wife, and so does Yahweh of the Bible, and her name is Asherah, right? And they talk about El, it is the Dagon god. And I'm not going to go all into this too deep. This is more of a reveal. If you want to look at the deeper things, look at some of my other ones on each little aspect of this, and it'll show you how I can correlate it all together, and then I do a reveal at the end and tie it all together with this same El God. But where do they worship at? They worship in a temple or a cathedral or maybe a chapel where there are people that are called elders that run the thing. Yeah, they are the elite people. They are the elected. Their son Baal is a storm god. He has control of electricity. I can't believe this elephant, ha ha ha, has been sitting here in the room the whole time and no one has noticed the elephant in the room. Well, surely, if you want to try to find your way out of this, you would say that the prophets came because they were always the ones trying to fix it up. Well, I don't know. Prophets like Elijah and Ezekiel and Nathaniel. I mean, it gets to the point where it almost gets silly when you find out how much L has to do with it. Well, no, they came out of that. They came out of that. Really? Did they? The people are from the line of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, where the name supposedly means a warrior of or wrestles with God, where warrior is Israel, and the name of God is El, right? How about this one? The ancient Phoenician word for the wandering star in the sky that we know today as Saturn was Israel. You can look this up. Ancient studiers and historians of the time that are famous, like Berosus, can show you where it's connected actually in there. And they actually make fun of the Hebrews at one point and say, doesn't anybody see that when they draw the ideogram of Abraham, they're trying to steal Chronos with it? And whenever they write the ideogram, which we don't find nowadays really, but when the Hebrews write that ideogram for Jacob, that it isn't Saturn's, right? Well, the weird thing about this is that Saturn, the name, in Persian was Shaitan, and the Hebrew and Persian language have a SHS sound, like Shah. So that's where you get from Semites, it's called Shemites and the land of Shem. And anyhow, so they have an SH, and so if you take the H out of Shaitan and you make it the Latin form of it, it ends up being Satan. And if you look at the satyrs, let's just look at a Seder real quick, people. And I'm not trying to freak you out or anything, but I know it's going to freak you out if you haven't heard any of this. But let's look at Seders. And tell me that a Seder doesn't look like well, they always depict them with wearing half goats and stuff on their body, but you find that old Greek stuff really just shows people that are quite often naked and they're wearing skins. We usually have a boner, haha. But they have these skins and they have animal tails hanging off of them. This is how they depict them. They don't have goat feet. They don't have goat feet. That becomes much later. But you can see they say they have little pointy ears, looking like elves, right? But here's one. And that's a normal man, straight up. In fact, this is supposed to actually be Baal taking the sickle and castrating him with it. So, and they were the goat gods. They were the goat people. And so they start associating goats with them. Okay. And somewhat uncivilized, still primordial people that had lived in a land of milk and honey during the time. And so you find that statues like this of Dionysus show that Dionysus comes from Pan and all these people in the satyrs, and that's where that comes from. But let's do one more look here real quick. Let's look at pictures of satyrs. just for a way to show you how that they've attached that through time, and because this was the opposition of the Hebrews against the Canaanites, and this is the way that they were depicted, you can easily probably get out of these pictures here how we get an idea for what Satan looks like even today. Satan is a half goat god. He's got horns, right? Poseidon of the area that runs things actually has a trident. So now you have that. They're associated with the color red, and now we've got a red-headed guy with goat horns holding a trident. And you probably couldn't deny the fact that that kind of looks like this. And Baal worship was terrible. The Canaanite worship of Baal is actually the origin of the word cannibalism. Which is another terrible thing. I'm sure it happened other places, but because they gripped on it so bad, you had that type of effect. And this is what your ancient Hebrews used to do when they strayed away from God and then came back. This is what they used to do. Kind of a disgusting picture here, but you're actually going to see people are loading a fire right back here in the back. This is a bronze statue. It's got arms and then a trap door right here built into it, and it's the smoke and fire coming out the top. He's taking the baby and going to throw it on its arms. It's going to sear and writhe and then fall into here and then be burned to death. This place is known as Sheol. You know it as hell. And these two kids here are watching this, and it's fixing to happen next. And if you look, there's a lady here holding up her naked kid going, me, 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 my kid's going to be sacrificed next to this great, great God that'll bring rain for us. We're going to kill our kids for rain. You've seen ancient stories about other people, and you don't think it had anything attached to somehow the ancient Hebrews, but here they all are doing their thing with their trumpets. This is their ceremony. This guy's got the ephod crap on, and these trumpets are making all the noise to drown out the sound of the kid squealing as it comes in here, and the parents of the child itself crying over the fact of it. And I hate to be so direct or something that shows, disgusting practices, but you can find this same similar practice with the owl that supposedly is alive and well still at the festivals that they still hold in secret meetings and things like that. But sure enough, I mean, you do see that something like this is where you get the idea of Satan, but actually the Baal and Canaanite thirsty fertility god right here that people attach to Hades and the underworld, which in the old stuff, the underworld is not hell up under the ground. It's actually just anything south of the equator. So it's Africa and Egypt, and Egyptian people were the ones that could go to the underworld, to the ever life and the ever after. They had to go right out because they were going farther to the underworld, and then they would leave and go to Orion. So, by the way, Orion is actually our Aryan, And the Sumerians were actually Aryan, and the Persians and all the people around there are somewhat Aryans and half-breeds and crossbreeds of all of themselves through that. And you look in the Bible and there's so much inbreeding. And you look in Greek and Roman stuff and there's inbreeding and stuff too. And it's, it's weird, but it's all man's past before they figured out genetics and how things all worked and where the sun goes at night and the fact of space not being full of water. All these people, ancient people, thought the world was full of water, the space was full of water, and the air kept it up and there was a bubble above. They didn't have the model we have nowadays with space. In fact, they thought that everything was just right there. The stars and the moon and the sun were the same size, and they were right there because they just barely and get it. And so you find that Islam, yep, that's the worship of Baal, right? But you also find that, so it's got the moon and sun god crescent and everything that goes along with it. So Islam is the worship of Baal. See, their symbols. Christianity is the worship of Baal, and it's got the little Satan symbols that these guys are throwing out there. Of course, it means I love you. Really? Really? In Judaism, throw out that symbol. Satanism throws that out. Skull and Bone Society throws those out. And what is that? Well, haven't we seen that, in 1980s rock star people doing all that, where it's supposed to be Satan? Then you come to find out it's really Saturn. Then you come to find out that who the Hebrew Israelites worshipped and still worship today is Saturn, and that's actually somebody who looks a lot like this. That's their idea, because he's the bronze statue that's heated up to glowing that you throw your kids to. And it tells you Satan is the deceiver of the whole world, and you don't listen. Revelations tells you this. So let me give you another reveal here real quick. You need to look at my video that says Josephus, a Flavian liar. And you'll see the truth to the story of Jesus and where it all comes from. You'll see Rome and Greek influence on it. And mankind is just now waking up from a 2,000-year-old fog, where it shows you that even the Quran believes that Allah, their God, is the best of deceivers. And we know nowadays that they use Abraham's Bible. In this Bible, it's the same thing, right? There's a great deception that starts all the way back at the time of Noah and Job, that gets carried on through the religion. And then the greatest deception of all is the fact that the oldest Bibles we find are Greek, and that it's all been twisted by the Greeks to pull them into their pantheon of Saturn, their major deity, and Zeus, his storm god son, who never really was the Roman god up north. It was always down here. Well, new archaeological studies are saying that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasian, and when everything went to shit, they left there and went north and pulled out of the desert area of the center of the world and went north. And it kind of makes sense. You look at models of the old Ice Age and how it encroached way down, and only the middle of the earth was the land of milk and honey. But as it spread out and the Ice Age went away and global warming showed up, not all at once, but showed up and started going up, 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 that they moved out of the desert area that was fast becoming a wasteland and moved to the north, and ended up being the Caucasoid races that dominate the whole northern hemisphere that are up there. And from Russians to Chinese and Asians, Caucasian, all the way through to Europe and UK, Scotland, everywhere there. And in fact, Persians and Armenians and all that have a lot in them too. The odd unique people are the Africans that are trapped down in Africa right now, and the India people that are separated over here. India's past shows that they're a crossbreed between blacks and Aryans that made them. In fact, they have an Aryan thing they want to deny about it. So it's looking like it all comes out of that. And your Bible all comes out of this. Saturn worship, El. El is the god of the patriarchs of the Bible. And something that a veil is now lifted 2,000 years later, and people are finally coming up to the realization of what it really, really means. And of course, Satan was really just an adversary. So he was going against an adversary. And apparently they lost, but yet got adopted in, and Rome sucked that into their pantheon because It was another telling of what all it all happened of time. They easily interjected themselves into that. Look at my other vids. Like if you like it. Subscribe if you will. If you don't like the information, I'm sorry, but it's coming out. And whenever you look at my other vids, you're going to see stuff in the sidebar that has a lot to do with this, and it'll keep continuing. I've got a lot of vids on it too. Subscribe and keep up with me, and more will be revealed. Peace.